Welcome, guys. This is take 3. This is our first episode of our action film series that we're going to be doing. And we're here today to talk about John Wick. I have with me Akash Dharmaraj and Arjun Dinesh, and I am, of course, Shashank Swaminathan. So, John Wick. It's starring the one and only Keanu Reeves, 50-year-old man, he's still going strong. And it's directed by the debut directors Chad Stahelski and David Leitch, who directed and produced this, and it's their first feature film coming from a background of being stunt choreographers.
The story of John Wick is actually loosely inspired by a real life incident involving a ex Navy SEAL. The story goes like it's about an aging retired hitman, and after his wife died, he has his house broken into, and he gets his dog killed and his car stolen, and he seeks revenge. That is it. That's the entire plot, and that's what makes this film damn interesting.
Yeah, I loved the how they played with emotional aspects in this film, because it's not like he told, it's not just a dog dying. We have a emotional background for that dog. Like the very first act of the film, we can see his wife dying because of cancer. So this dog is a gift from his wife, her last gift to him. So now when it's died, when it's killed actually, so he wants a revenge, and we also see how much he loves his car. So all his frustration and his lonely life is he takes it out only by driving his car, so now it's stolen. So there's this emotional aspect that we don't usually see in action films.
So I guess we can say that we got the audience invested in the film right at the beginning of the first act, which most action films fail to do even within the 3-act structure.
Yeah, I believe that's because of the way they paced it, because they paced it for the character and it's not for the action. So when you look at general action films, it's the pacing is like a machine gun. It's like rapid fire. It's like bam, 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 action, exposition, and it really doesn't give enough time for an audience to get connected to the characters that are in the story. But John Wick, it took all that, put it in the dustbin, and then it started over. It was like, I'll introduce the characters, I'll show the audience what they are into first, and then I'll tell them how the action goes. So that was a very nice thing they did. So when Keanu Reeves starts shooting some people up, you're like, yes, do it.
Yeah.
You want
You
him to
actually
shoot.
want him
Yeah.
to win, right?
So that's pretty. That was a good decision they made.
And also about the training, it's all properly choreographed, right? It's
Yeah.
not shaky cam or things like that. It's
Yeah.
properly choreographed and it's steady. So what about the training? How they did it?
The training, like Keanu Reeves, he did 90% of his own stunts, and he trained for 8 hours a day for 4 months
Wow.
before the film. So, like, see, this gave him, this gave the directors so much of freedom, and that is something you need for an action film, especially an action film that doesn't have shaky cam, taken. Like, shaky cam was introduced by the Bond trilogy. But that set up tension. That was good. That they used it well. But then they used it as a medium to hide stunt doubles and
Right.
ropes and all that. But now they went back to the old Asian film fighting choreography style, and they had a wider angle of framing, and they had longer and smoother shots. So that's something. It was because of the training they did 4 months prior to the shooting.
So, I mean, Act 1, all said and done, Act 2 and 3 is where the fun begins. So, let's take a look at the starting sequence of Act 2,
Yeah.
which introduces John Wick as John Wick.
It's all done in a kind of a graphic novel way, right?
Yeah. We can see the subtitles here. Like when the Vigo, the Russian mobster, he has
Talks
that
in
poem.
Russian.
Yeah. He has this poem that he tells about the boogeyman, and the font is very comic, graphic novelesque style.
Right.
And the whole visual treatment of the film is really it's inspired by graphic novels. The stark contrast in the lighting and the way they use colors to like reflect the psychological state of the characters.
You can see the change in colors too. So look at his house and look at John Wick's house.
Yeah.
It's all lit in a kind of a blue kind of way.
Yeah. He has a very yellow lighting, and he has a blue lighting, like showing that this guy is afraid of John. That gives him the yellow lighting, and John is a very cold-hearted dude, and that gives him the blue lighting, and that's really that contrast gives a lot of information that is in between the lines, and that's really good.
We can see a lot of long takes here, which is very very rare these days in action films. I guess these are all inspired from John Woo's films. John Woo is this Hong Kung filmmaker who introduced this gun fu thing. in his film Better Tomorrow. So I guess, and also this film is inspired from other directors like John Boorman's Point Blank. It's a 1967 film, and John Pierre, what's his name? John Pierre Melville, I guess.
Melville,
And
yeah,
its
yeah.
film Red Circle. It's a 1970 Italian film. So I guess maybe because of that he named him as John Wick.
Yeah.
So this John Woo is known for his long take scenes, long take action scenes. So which is rare these days. And in this John Woo's Hard Boiled, it's I guess 1980s film. There is a 4.5 minute long take action scene. Imagine for action film, a long take is impossible
Yeah,
in these days.
especially that day.
Yeah, and also those days because of practical effects, no VFX and things like that. So it's a 4.5 minute single long take sequence. So I guess all those inspired in these films. So it influenced it directly. You can see a lot of long take action scenes, and I guess that's what makes this film even more great.
Yeah. You can see the gun crew being influenced here, and that was actually, trained like Keanu Reeves got trained by this, three-gun training specialist called Taran Killiam, I guess. Not Tar, I think Taran Gunther, something like that. So he was trained by that professional guy, and he trained with a pistol and a machine gun, a rifle, and then a shotgun. So they infused all this training along with the martial art training to create give birth to this new style called gun fu, and that was what was used in this film. Yeah.
Wait, but Hollywood has been doing Kung Fu for a while though, right?
Yeah.
There were a couple of films. There was Equilibrium by with
Yeah, and the
Christian
piece
Bale
of trash
and
Aeon Flux as well. Yeah.
Aeon Flux and Ultraviolet.
Yeah,
And I mean, if you take pop culture as a whole, there's a couple of video games before that. There was the famous Max Payne,
Yeah.
which I'm sure everyone's played. And before that, there was this other like Japanese game called Devil May Cry, which I mean they sort of did it before everyone else in the Western scene at least. But yeah, I think John Wick is what really figured it out. Okay, this is the way to use it
Yeah.
like effectively.
Yeah. So the other good thing about this film is that it's low budget. It's a debut film for the directors, and it's a very low budget film compared to action flicks in Hollywood these days.
Right.
And like they really utilize low budget, like to its maximum extent, because they've worked as stunt coordinators before this. They knew how to make four stunt guys look like 40 people in the film. So apparently, like they had like very less number of people, like stunt guys. And to show a lot of guys coming at John Wick, they made they had to like get friendly with the makeup guys, the costume guys, and the hairstylists, because you see they shot like the action sequences with the stunt guys with the beards and the full long grown hairs, and then they started shaving it. Then they had French beards, and then they were clean shaven.
Right. So
So,
they
like,
reuse the same person.
Yeah, they use the
thrice or
same person,
four
right?
times.
Then like they use couple of masks, and then handkerchief to hide their features. So they figure out like really creative ways to use like very little number of guys to
This is the main advantage of people who know stunts directing a film,
Right.
directing
exactly.
an action film.
For those who don't know, the directors were the choreographers for The Matrix, and that's how they knew Keanu Reeves, and that's how this whole project came together in the.
They have this creative freedom to use a lot of action sequence, and being a low budget film, they have this freedom to experiment a lot of things like gun fu, long take action sequence like this.
Yeah, fun fact, it was like the two directors, right? Chad Stahelski body doubled Keanu Reeves in Matrix,
In The Matrix,
and David Leitch body doubled Hugo Weaving in Matrix. That's actually a very cool fact.
Like the initial script of John Wick, it has like 6 to 10 kills at total. Okay, imagine now we saw a scene where there is more than 10 kills, I guess.
Yeah.
So after Chad Stahelski and David Leitch took over the project, they saw a lot of potential in this for even more action-packed film. So they worked together to make more than, I don't know, like more than hundreds.
I don't know, I think it's around 80 kills.
80,
from 8
80
to
kills
80.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the thing is, these guys own the directors. They own a stunt company called 8711, and they've been talking to a lot of Hollywood A-list directors on this fighting style gun fu, and how that could like make this action seem enthralling, more enthralling. And these Hollywood A-list directors, they don't like it because it requires the actors to go into dedicated training, right? Because Keanu went through 4 months of training, and that requires even A-list directors who are acting in Hollywood movies, they need to go through that training, and that is like dedication, and that's not something
That
the directors
everyone
want.
can,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we can't really expect a Keanu Reeves level of dedication from every Hollywood actor, right? So I understand why some directors were a bit skeptical about that. But talking about dedication, the whoever worked on the script as well created a amazing world with all these elements that really work together and are like alive and believable.
Yeah, and they
So
created something new for us because we have seen a lot of gangster or triad films like this, but this has something really new. A lot of elements that could pave way for a lot of spin-offs also.
Yeah, true.
Like we see this Continental, and we see a lot of interesting characters. That's important. Like Willem Dafoe's role, a character called as Miss Perkins, Winston. A lot of people are interesting. Like this Inspector Jimmy. Everyone are they are interesting in that film. So this could pave way for a spin-offs. Like more than John Wick's character, we could actually expect a individual film for these
right,
characters even.
it's possible. Yeah, the world is.
Yeah, I love how they gave detail with the talisman as well. The coin that they give, to get into the Continental. That's like a token of acceptance. Like they went so far to, like tie in Greek mythology that it's not a currency. Currency is like real world, but talisman is like Greek mythology. Use the talisman and it's not having any currency value. It's about a token of acceptance. So you're part of that cult, and you give that coin, you're into that cult. You get a drink, you get a room, you get a cleanup service, you get anything, but it's just one coin. And that's that really, that's a lot of effort put into an action film that the producers consider just an action film, and this is the creative action film, if you could say that.
I mean, I guess they might have even had making it a franchise in mind because
Yeah,
we've had the second
yeah, chapter 2.
the movie that's come out, and well, chapter 3 is in production as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not directly related, but Atomic Blonde as well came out this year.
Yeah, because
which-
we see David Leitch, the
Yeah, David
director of the
Leitch.
first film, he worked in Atomic Blonde, and we see a lot of elements in Atomic Blonde, like John Wick.
Yeah.
I don't say it's as good as John Wick, but still it had those elements like
Yeah, it
the
did have those
subtitles and the kung fu fight scenes, a lot of things. John Wick had a direct influence on films like those.
Yeah, true. Like I think John Wick did have very old influences, but at the same time, I think you've been familiar. You're familiar with the Raid duology. Raid Redemption, right? Yeah, that's something like people don't know about. Like not many people know about the Raid series, but Raid is like a huge influence on John Wick because Asian cinema in general, they go for this. They give physical training to the actors because physical training is also part of their performance, not just the dialogue. You rehearse for the dialogue for 4 weeks, you have to rehearse for the fight for the 4 weeks, for the fight 4 weeks as well. It's both are equally important for the character, and that's what makes the difference. And that's good that John Wick has started that in Hollywood so that we can get more films like that out of Hollywood.
I mean, I can't help but notice that it's a debut director that's achieved all this. So, what does that say about action directors of Hollywood so far?
Essentially, to make a good action film, you need a director who knows his stunts. Okay, when it comes to choreography, you need a director that knows it, because when you look at big budget action films like superhero films like Avengers, you have directors who direct the film, and then you have second unit directors that direct the action. When you have two directors talking to the actor, that creates a very, like like something that, yeah, it's not good. And like when you look at films like those, you have story, and then you have an action sequence, then you have story, and then you have an action sequence, and it's really not weaving in with each other, not really well. But when you look at John Wick, an action sequence can explain more about the character than any monologue can ever do. Like John Wick doesn't have to go all like, I used to be a good hitman, and he just fights someone and he punches
you see
someone
it
and
right
he's like
there,
tired.
yeah.
He's not that experienced. Like his experience is lost now. You get that out of just the action sequence, and that's necessary for a director to know. And I think that's an essential thing for a good action film to be made.
Well, let's hope that the directors learn from John Wick and we see more of this in the future. Alright, let's stay tuned.